My name is Juleus Ghunta. I am a writer, particularly a children's writer, but I also write poems and essays. I'm the author and co-editor of about 6 books. My most recent book is Rohan Bullkin and the Shadows, which we'll talk about a little later. I have many interests, but these days my focus is primarily on raising awareness of the causes and impacts of adverse childhood experiences in the Caribbean.
So that's the question right there. The book is about adverse childhood experiences. Could you please explain to the Curaçao people what that means?
Yes, adverse childhood experiences refer to intense sources of stress that many children endure, and we're aware of many of these. For example, physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, community violence, peer victimization. What is interesting about this concept is that for the first time, we are now able to make sense of how distinct abuses that children endure affect them during their childhood and later on in life. There was a great study, important study, which was done by the Centers for Disease Control and Kaiser Permanente in the United States in 1998. And this study, the adverse child experiences study, focused on 10 adverse child experiences in 3 categories. Abuse, that's physical, sexual, and emotional abuse, neglect, emotional neglect, and physical neglect, and various family dysfunctions such as divorce in the family, domestic violence. And what they found was that of the population that was studied, 17,000 people, mostly white, college educated, a significant number of them had at least one adverse child experience. Subsequent research, such as one that came out of Stanford University, found that a student or child with 4 or more adverse child experiences is 32 times more likely to have behavioral problems or to struggle to learn in school. And so with this information, our ability now to say, this is how CSA or child sexual abuse affects children, we are able to put in place the precise corrective measures that we need to help children who are enduring these kinds of challenges.
This book in particular, is it a story or just an explanation on what adverse childhood experiences are about?
It is a number of things. So the book has 3 parts. It begins with a letter to grown-ups, to adult readers, putting into context why adverse child experiences, this conversation that we're having in the Caribbean, is so important, and how the book is structured. Then that is followed by a story, which is actually based on my own lived experiences and the lived experiences of some of my peers. And then at the end of the book, in the appendix, I provide an overview of adverse child experiences, which also includes some of the strategies and programs that people can engage in to achieve a measure of healing. And that is for any literate children who is at a level where he or she can understand that, but also for parents and childcare practitioners such as physicians, psychologists, social workers, to use to help children to understand what they are going through.
So if I may ask, what inspired you? Why did you write this book? Why this this theme in particular? And what is your main focus? What you want to achieve with this book?
I had a very difficult childhood, which is very common across the Caribbean. These days, particularly as it relates to challenges that boys face. Within Jamaica, 8 out of every 10 children experience physical violence at some point, and a significant number of them experience many other forms of abuse. As a 5-year-old, I experienced physical violence, neglect at the hands of my single parent, my mother. My father was not an important figure in my life. I learned to read at a late age because of the many challenges I had, including extreme poverty. I learned to read at age 12 and was one of only, I think, 1 or 2 students who were forced to repeat grade 6 because we were just not smart enough to
May I interrupt you?
Yes,
if I may interrupt you, You are telling me you started reading at the age of 12.
When I was 12 years old. I was illiterate about grade 3 and subliterate at grade 5. So in grade 6, my second year when I repeated, that's when my reading improved and I was able to finally say I'm able to read to a degree.
And nowadays you're a writer.
I am. It's a remarkable journey, I must admit. And to a certain degree, there's some aspects of this journey, though the outcome is beautiful and inspiring, that I would not wish on even my worst enemy. I had to work extremely hard to get where I am today. And to be quite honest, I don't think it is fair to even ask other people to work as hard. One hopes that our region will be a bit more egalitarian so that people won't have to sacrifice as much as I had to in order to get where I am today. But yes, I learned to read at age 12. At age 14, I was living, I think, in my 8th or 9th home. My extended family threw me onto the street. And so as a 14-year-old, I was walking in another community searching for a place to live. At age 14, I was on my own. I've worked all of my life. When I entered university at 18, I was extremely sick, but by that time I'd had probably 18 to 20 different jobs. I did the best I could to survive. And I was fortunate to have received help along the way. And my mother, I now understand, did the best she could with the resources that she had, including the emotional and intellectual resources. But what I endured harmed me in many significant ways and continue to have impacts, negative impacts on my life today.
My final question to you is, I would really like to know the title of the book and where and when can we purchase this book?
The title of the book is Rohan Bullkin and the Shadows, a story about ACEs and hope. And ACEs, of course, mean adverse child experiences. And the book will be released on December 31st by Caribbean Reads Publishing, which is a Caribbean press, but based in the United States. The book is currently available online wherever books are sold. And so one is able to pre-order. And the book will be available in stores in January across the Caribbean. Of course, if stores, individuals, organizations in Curacao would like to purchase the book, I would encourage them to contact Caribbean Reads to purchase bulk copies. I'd just like to say finally that this book takes on very, very complex and challenging issues. This conversation about trauma is one that we need to have in the Caribbean because trauma affects every single aspect of our lives and has implications for everything from healthcare. For example, we know from ACE's research that children who grow up to be adults who have not had opportunities to address these particular issues are much more susceptible to many of the NDCs, non-communicable diseases that we endure, such as diabetes, heart disease, the major killers in the Caribbean. There are links between adverse child experiences and crime. One research says that boys who experience 4 or more adverse child experiences are 9 times more likely to become violent or to become aggressive. Boys who experience violence at the hands of women, particularly their mothers, are much more likely than others to become violent towards their partners later on in life. So the implications of this research are vast. It's really important. But this book is not a sad book. It's a book about a difficult topic, but it has received a lot of positive responses because it's a book that is also full of hope and life, and it's in some ways and perspective, and in some ways is reflective of the very difficult but a remarkable journey that I have had.